What's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. We're getting further down the health hierarchy of needs this week, talking about nutrition. This is something that a lot of people want to know about. Obviously, it is the backbone of weight loss. You really need to get your nutrition right, but we use it for much higher level things. Tune in to learn why.
Good morning, everybody. It is Monday morning here in Sydney, Australia. We've got a cracking series for you this week on nutrition. We're going to take a deep dive into what we recommend here at Unity Gym, and also reveal why we don't like diets at all. Today we're going to kick things off sort of talking, or I guess framing, why we behave the way we do around nutrition and why we teach what we do, and why it's more importantly I guess a later priority to building an exercise habit. We first focus on motivation, igniting your motivation, and then building a healthy exercise habit. And then number 3 on the health hierarchy is nutrition, building healthy nutrition habits. Before we get started, question of the day. We want to know in the comments section, if you're tuning in on YouTube or listening to the podcast or on the UMS Movement Mastermind group, watching live, we want to know, what is your favorite diet? Do you have a favorite diet? And if so, share it. How are you, Rad?
Yeah, I'm good. It's it's a fun topic to talk about. It's it's definitely not something. It's funny because we, when we talk about this topic, we came from going so deep on this stuff because we used to do weight loss at Unity Gym. Believe it or not, there was a time when we trained people for weight loss. And at that time, we really, really went deep on learning about nutrition because it's such a critical part about it. So now that we don't do weight loss anymore, or at least don't focus on it, it's a funny one to come around and to bring up, but it's still a good one because so few people get this right. Even people like the 3 of us in this room here, Richard, Yanni, and me, we all at times have to do a reset on our nutrition. And we've been doing self-exploration for about 15 years now, you and me. Richie, maybe about 10 years, I think. And I say that because I was the catalyst for Richard's look into healthy eating. It was pretty funny. We moved in together.
He was on the Macca's diet.
Well, we moved in together when we were in the army, and I didn't know him from a bar of soap. It was funny how we moved. We weren't even in the same section, which means when you're in the army, you don't spend a lot of time with people from other sections. But we came back from East Timor, and he needed a place to stay, and I knew that he was a good guy. There were certain guys that I wouldn't have even offered a room to. There's some pretty wild cards in the army. And we said, do you want to stay with us? And he went, yeah, for sure. And he started paying rent because we had a 3-bedroom place, me and my mate. And after about a week or two, we went shopping once, and Richard bought, frozen meat pies and Gatorades and frozen sausage rolls and stuff like that. And I said to him, I tried to be polite and gentle, but I said, listen, man, if you're interested, I've learned a little bit about nutrition, and I'm going to be cooking healthy meals, like just stuff that nourishes your body. And if you're interested, I can teach you how to cook. And he went, yeah, let's do it. And he really embraced it. And I taught him what I knew. I just taught him the basics about, cooking meat and making vegetables and salad and stuff like that. And now fast forward 11 years or about that, about 10 years. Yeah, 10 years. And he's a very, very healthy person, very, very nutrition conscious. But at that time, I'd only really been learning about nutrition, like really becoming enthusiastic about it for probably about 3 or 4 years back then. It was when we became personal trainers that we started to be told about what happens to your body when you eat McDonald's and when you eat shit, and what goes on in your arteries and all this stuff. And you and I started looking at what we ate going, whoa,
yeah,
we better fix this up.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and it's a good topic.
It's later down the hierarchy. I'll jump on this straight away because nutrition, I believe, is very subjective based on the individual's upbringing. And there's a lot of research. It's funny, I had a really good chat with my mother, of all people, on the weekend. I caught up and we went and had lunch together with my mum and stepdad. And my mum asked the question, do you guys give a nutrition program at the gym? And she shared a story about how she's working with an American company at the moment who has this nutrition plan and this and that. And I said, look, we give, I like to call it a nutrition guideline, not a plan, because what works for one person doesn't necessarily work well for someone else, and that's why I believe nutrition sort of needs to bend a little bit to the individual. But there is a set of criteria that everybody should be aiming for, and that's what we do. We try to get people thinking about that set of criteria, very much aligned with what's going to support your training. You know, we've moved beyond a weight management gym at Unity, and we're more into human performance now, and increasing, maximizing, whatever you want to call it, human performance through better strength, flexibility, and cardiovascular fitness. We believe that creates the perfect or ideal athletic foundation that you can then go and deploy into whatever physical practice you prefer, and a big part of that is how you learn to nourish your body, and we like to really flip it from the get, and rather than call it a diet, rather than say that we give people a diet, we teach you how to nourish, not diet. And that's something I'm very passionate about, because a good friend of mine framed it very well. He's a practicing cardiologist, and he sort of makes the analogy. A diet is, by nature, has an expiry date. A diet is like going on holiday or going on a vacation. You always come home from the vacation and it kind of sucks. You get that post-vacation blues. He says his experience working as a cardiologist for 55 years is exactly the same. People come off a diet and have the post-diet blues, where they end up rebounding and gaining weight, and so the concept of a diet and this idea that it has an expiry date doesn't work. You need to build habits that are something that you will do forever. And your story with Richard is a great example, because there's a couple of key elements there that people don't really highlight or aren't aware of. One is that it worked so well for Richard because he was in an environment where it was the normal practice. I mean, with you, I know that Lil, your other flatmate, didn't adopt the nutrition, so he obviously didn't. He obviously had a reason for it. But this is why we put it further down the health hierarchy, because it takes a lot more intervention to change how you eat. There's so much influence. There's so many things in our lives that influence us to go in the wrong direction with nutrition, that it is just a really big thing for a lot of people to adopt.
Yeah, it's actually, I honestly believe that it's actually a lifestyle intervention as much or even more than a nutrition intervention, because from personal experience, if you can't change the lifestyle factors that are going on that cause you to eat the wrong foods, then you've just got no chance. And I'll give you an example of that. I've been to food courts in North Sydney where they have about 12 or 15 different options, or maybe 20 that you could choose from. And I've been there with friends, and people say things like, "Oh, I feel like eating healthy today, I'm going to get this." But I'll look at it and think, man, I'm not putting that in my body. That, your healthy choice for me is a cheat meal. That's like what I would do, maybe once a week or once a fortnight or something like that. And I'll give you an example of what I mean. People will say, I'm going to get Thai food today. So, that's by a lot of people's standards, that's a really healthy choice, because you can watch them cook the vegetables and the meat right in front of you, and when you get it, you're getting quite crispy vegetables and, with rice or whatever. But the issue that goes along with that is all the little things that they add to that Thai food that makes it taste a little bit better than when you cook the same meal at your own home are things that are really, really bad for you. It's honestly things like MSG, or it's things that we'd call food additives, where if you looked on the back of a packet, you'd have all these numbers and everything. Yeah. So that's one thing that's really, really, really bad for you. And another thing is that you don't know the quality of the oil that they use. And I can almost guarantee it that if you're paying a moderate price for, some takeaway Thai or whatever it is that they are every business, it runs on margins, right? You run on profit margins. So when you're a food business, your profit margins come from things like cutting costs on the cost of oil or things like that, something that you use a hell of a lot of. And high quality oil costs so much more than low quality oil. And low quality oils are one of the major causes when you heat low quality oil above 100 degrees Celsius, which any fried food is heated to. it is one of the major causes of trans fatty acids intake, which is one of the major causes of contributing factors to heart disease and stroke. So that's a little bit of a digression. But what I mean by, I'm going back to this idea of the lifestyle changes. So when you make that choice that you're going to eat healthy, if you're really honest with yourself, all of a sudden you can't go for lunch with your friends every day at that food court, because there's nothing there that actually supports the kind of nutritional intervention that we want to talk about, and you start having to, like what we've found, the only real way that is an easy way that's budget conscious that works for you, that we all do here, is you eat for lunch today what you ate for dinner last night. And you just cook double the amount of food and you pack it in and we all do that. Yanni, Richard and myself, we all come into work and we have our lunchbox with our dinner from last night. And that's like people go, oh yeah, like, oh, okay, is that what you eat? But it's not so much about what do you eat, it's about, are you ready to make the choice that you're not going to go to lunch with your friends every day? That you're going to change your lifestyle so that when all your friends at work say, hey, come on, let's go down and get lunch, and you say, oh no, it's all good, I've got my lunch here. Because people go, what? What do you mean? We're all going for lunch. Or, you're not going for that Friday lunch where everybody has a beer, which is the ritual at your work. Which is a really big thing around North Sydney. When we speak to people that are in the executive world, in the corporate world in North Sydney, that's a huge thing. It's like Friday lunches, and people make jokes about how lunches bleed into after work beers, and are you willing to give that up? And so that's really why we put the nutrition as the third step on the health hierarchy, because it is harder to get all of that right than a daily habit of movement.
And it's much easier to get right once you start to frame it as, oh, hang on, I'm eating or drinking to support what I'm doing at the gym already. And so once someone has a healthy habit of nutrition, it is just naturally the next progression. Your nutrition will generally improve when you're exercising a lot. You tend to not want to do the things that are going to interrupt or interfere with that exercise practice. And so that's why we find it really works better to just take it as the next step and not freak out about it too much initially. Focus on that first lowest hanging fruit, building that exercise habit. Get it daily, because if it's a daily exercise habit, then you're going to find it easier that momentum carries through into your nutrition.
Oh, it's so much easier.
A lot easier.
So much easier.
And then from there, we just have our criterion. First and foremost, we want to try and balance energy, and that's in and of itself, it's a really tough thing to do, because nutrition, doesn't matter what diet you're on, if you don't balance energy and calories in versus calories out, the law of thermodynamics is always going to be true. It's one of the first and I think most important laws of physics, and you cannot beat it. So you can argue until the cows come home that different calories feel different in the body. Yes, they will respond differently. The more fiber and the more whole food, you'll tend to feel more satisfied. The hormones in the body are triggered a little bit better, and you'll tend to eat less. But at the end of the day, a calorie is a calorie, and you have to learn to manage that. So that's the first step. And we tend to say that if you're not a male below 12% body fat and a female below around 20 to 22%, then you probably don't have that right just yet. And that's something that you really need to work on.
Man, I was, Will, who's one of our members here, who used to be what's called a personal training coordinator at Fitness First. I think he was there, he reckons, for about a decade or something. Now, what that means is, it means that you're the person that hires all of the personal trainers. You're the person that manages the personal trainers. Like you're a manager of the personal trainers at one of the biggest chain gyms in Australia and the UK. And I was asking him about some people that he's worked with, and he was telling me about what it was like working with Charles Poliquin. And I don't know if you had this experience, because I didn't work with Charles, but you did. He was saying, I said, what do you think of it? He said, oh, he's really good. He said, man, he's brutal though. He upsets a lot of people. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, there's a couple of people in there that were overweight, and they were asking about periodization. And he literally looked them dead in the eyes and said, you do not need to worry about periodization. You need to worry about that treadmill and your diet, because periodization is the last thing you need to worry about. You need to lose weight. And that is a brutal thing to be saying to somebody, but at the same time, in an industry like this is a really I'm probably going to piss some people off when I say this, but that Jim Jeffries' latest comedy show, he really nails this in a way, right?
Yep.
Where he talks about how saying fat shaming is the only type of addiction that you are not allowed to do. And what he means by that is
you're not allowed to shame.
And he makes a joke about this where he says if you're addicted to smoking, if you're addicted to drinking, if you're any drugs, anyone can shame you, oh, you smokers, like you go to pubs and everybody has to go outside and they've got to smoke in the smoker. But he said if you tried to do that to a fat person, somebody that's overweight, even saying a fat person, a lot of people say, oh, you can't say that.
Yeah.
But so we've developed this thing where we protect people's feelings around something that is one of the biggest killers.
Yep.
It's largely within our control, and it's something that people need to be more aware of, And so this whole thing about what Charles Poliquin, the way that he did it, it's like it's a little bit of a tough love for certain people that's hard for people to accept, I guess, especially considering that in the Western world, in Sydney, in Australia and in America, there's actually more overweight people than there are healthy weight people. People have the nerve to say to you or me often, oh, you guys are too skinny, you need to put on some weight.
Yeah.
I'm like, what? I'm not too skinny.
Well, we're pretty brutal. About? I mean, you were when I was putting in the requirements or recommendations for people because and this is something we're going to talk about deeply this week. Nutrition intervention is not one decision that you'll make, and this was another thing I learned from my friend the cardiologist. It's the 100 little decisions you make every day that accumulate that give you the win, but. The very first thing that has to come first is, are you balancing your energy? Yeah. Are you gaining weight, losing weight, or staying the same weight? And is that weight an ideal weight? Is it? And we're pretty brutal. I mean, I asked the boys, I said, is it okay, do you think we're going to upset too many people if I say that if you're a man over 12% body fat, you're overweight, and a woman over 22%? And you guys were like, oh, yeah, maybe. But we're pretty brutal. And the reason why is because it
does depend on what age you're at.
Yeah,
if you get into your 50s and 60s, those percentages would probably go up a little bit.
Yeah, to a degree. Charles would disagree.
Yeah, not a lot. Not a lot though. Not a lot though. Very small amount.
Yeah, Charles. I did sit in the room and hear Charles brutalise people about their nutrition, and he was a lot stricter than that. Yeah. 10% was the cutoff for him. If you're above 10% as a man, you were getting a bit overweight. Yeah. But the reason why we do it is because we teach calisthenics, and we use calisthenics as our way of demonstrating our skills, and it's just you just can't do it if you're carrying too much body fat. It's too dangerous. It's too much stress on the body. It makes everything very, very difficult. And you're at much higher risk of injury if you're carrying excessive body weight. I mean, just think about the logic of doing chin-ups or pull-ups, with 20 extra kilos or 10 extra kilos is a lot of weight.
Man, even 5 extra kilos. Yeah. When I've gotten heavier from the right ways, from muscle mass, the body weight exercises become a lot harder as you become heavier.
And just let me finish. And so the first skill that we really work to unlock in calisthenics after the chin-up or pull-up is the handstand. And the handstand in and of itself, you are defying human evolution. It is not something that the body is designed to do, and it puts extreme stress on the shoulders, the wrists, the hands. And if you're carrying any extra weight, it is too much stress. But a lot of people come in, and that's the first thing they want to learn. They want to learn how to do a handstand, And yeah, it's tough because often you have to say you are not ready, not because you don't have the flexibility, because you're carrying too much body weight,
Yep.
So that's our first step. Our first step is to learn how to stabilize your energy in versus energy out, and there are lots of different ways that you can do that. Whether it's with calorie counting, using apps, we teach everything, and we try to find what's going to work for the right person. I like to use time restricted eating and intermittent fasting, and to give you an example, most Mondays I will do a 24-hour fast, and that just really helps to sort of balance my energy for the week. It helps to offset things that I may have consumed over the weekend that I probably shouldn't have, and it just helps to get me in good stead for the week so that I can be a bit more relaxed around what I eat. I do all sorts of stuff, and it works for me. It works for me. Some days I'll eat like the warrior diet where I only have one meal for the entire day, but it's because it works for me. Once I get into flow throughout the day, I can fuel myself on a little bit of caffeine or tea and water, and if I don't think about it too much, then I'll be fine. But that doesn't mean it's going to be right for everyone. We've got some good comments in here. Some people saying that they use the 5-2 diet, which is a time-restricted eating. There's a few people that are going for intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is the abstinence of food for 24 or more hours. So most people that do like a 16-8, that's a time-restricted eating regime. Yep. And look, I like it for many reasons, but I don't say that it's. I'm certainly not an intermittent fasting zealot, and I certainly don't suggest that it is a weight loss diet, because it's not. It can become a really great way of controlling calorie intake, but it can also be a terrible way if you're the type of person that has very bad discipline.
We've had people that really didn't get it, and they use the breaking window of the fast like a reward for the fact that they didn't eat for 16 hours. So when they got into that 8-hour period, they just ate like just the worst foods and so much of it. I used intermittent or time. It's actually, guys, if it's less than 24 hours that you don't eat for, it's not called fasting. It's called time-restricted eating. A fast only occurs from the 24-hour mark of abstinence from calories. And you notice that I said calories, not food. It's calories that you have to abstain from. I've cycled in and out of that, where now when I'm training well and I'm consistent with my training, I actually do the total opposite. I'm doing 16 hours of eating and 8 hours of not eating, and I'm doing that because I'm trying to build muscle at the moment. So there's different reasons to do different types of eating, but hearing what people are saying here, like I'm doing time-restricted eating, I'm doing 16-8, I'm doing this, I'm doing 5-2. The really good thing about what all of you are doing is that you're all being aware of what you're eating. You're trying to do something that isn't a diet, but it is actually a change in your behavior around the way that you eat, and you're working to figure something out that works long-term for you. And I can tell you right now that dialing in your nutrition is a process that takes time. We have a friend, check him out if you want some inspiration on Instagram. He's called Origin of Energy. And out of anyone that I know personally, and when I say I know personally, he's one of my closest friends. I've known him since high school for 30 years now. We moved out of home together. So I know what he's done. I know his journey very, very well. That guy goes deeper into nutrition than anyone I know, and he goes more obsessively into it than anyone I know. And he has changed his tune and the way that he eats so many times, because his whole thing is a journey of self-exploration. And he doesn't preach anything that he hasn't tried on himself for 6 months. And then after he's done it on himself for 6 months and felt the results, he'll put it on to other people. And so the reason I'm saying that is because the person that I even look up to for nutrition inspiration, that is more of a obsessive zealot than Yanni and I or Richard are, he is still on a journey of discovery, even after 20 years of doing this. So this isn't something that you just say to yourself, all right, I'm going to do this, and you do it. It's something that if you're smart about it, it becomes a journey. And in the very, very least, I would say this: if you can't look in the mirror and be happy, 100% happy with the body composition, meaning you've got enough muscle mass and a little amount of fat mass on you to be able to perform the way that you want to, not be in a risk factor for heart disease, stroke, raised cholesterol, all of those things. If you can't,
that you're confident.
And that you're confident, that you feel good about yourself. If you can't look in the mirror and say that with all sincerity and certainty, then a really good exercise for you to do is going to be to spend 6 months really, really going for it on this, becoming, like learning about calorie control, like Yanni said, using an app to track everything that you eat, preparing your own food and making your own food that you have for dinner the same meal that you have for lunch tomorrow, learning how to control your cravings and have periods of time where you don't eat anything at all for at least 16 hours once a week or twice a week. Like just just developing a different
improving
relationship
metabolic
with food.
flexibility, which is something that
Yeah.
Stephen Pellegrino's talking about here as well. He's said, "Hi, I'm on a 17/7 intermittent fast at 100 kcals a day, mostly low carb. I just read your nutrition blueprint and might tweak with a day of no carb ketosis." And what he's sort of referring to there is very, very important. And one of the things that we're going to talk about later on in the week, we will talk about all of the criterion that we teach here. But one of them is to improve metabolic flexibility, which means, our bodies, most of us, if you're on a Western diet, are very, very efficient at metabolizing glycogen, carbohydrate, for our primary fuel source. It just has become our primary fuel source because it's abundant and it's easier to produce wheat and rice and things like that, and it's cheaper, it's more cost effective. Unfortunately, though, it's not always the healthiest thing, and if we're a little bit overweight and we are trying to metabolize some fat to reduce our body fat percentage, then we're going to need to be more flexible. We're going to need to be able to switch between those different substrates of energy, glycogen or fat. And the best way to do that is to exercise it. It's like a workout. You one day you eat carb and the next day you don't eat any carbohydrate and mostly fat and protein. And that in and of itself creates this flexibility where your body, when it comes time to metabolize fat, will be able to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make something very, very clear here, guys, and we're going to talk about this more tomorrow. Being on a high-fat, low-carb diet does not mean that you are going to burn more fat all the time. Okay, this is something that takes people many times hearing to understand fully. When you eat only fat, or the more you eat of a macronutrient, fat, protein, or carbohydrate, the better your body becomes at metabolizing it. But that also means that it becomes better at storing it. So be very careful if you go down the dogma of, I only eat fat and protein because it helps me burn fat. Yeah, you will. You'll become better at metabolizing those two substrates. But you will also become really efficient at storing it when you need to store energy. So the idea that if you have a high-fat diet, you'll be leaner, it's just not right. It's just a misunderstanding of the way the human body works. But saying that, we are proponents of a lower carb, higher protein, probably a little bit higher fat diet, and there are a few reasons for that. And one of them is that it just seems to do better with our clientele. It seems to help reduce all the other things that we're going to talk about later on in the week: systemic inflammation. It helps to cultivate a healthier gut microbiome. It furnishes your need for muscle protein synthesis when you're exercising a lot. And so there are reasons why, but that does not mean that it is necessarily the best diet. The best diet is the diet, someone said it earlier on here, I think Aidan Potts, the best diet is the diet you'll actually stick to. And that may mean that it might look differently to mine, based on what you've been brought up on. Your gut microbiome is going to be sending you different feelings, sensations and urges, different cravings based on what it's used to feeding on. And if you want to change it, you need to be ready for that challenge, and I think that's a great thing to do, but make sure you're ready for it, because it's not always going to be comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Look, we're going to go deeper into this later this week. We're going to be talking about nutrition all week. The most important takeaway from today's show is the idea that if you want to start tackling this, you really want to have made sure that you've looked at the earlier steps on the health hierarchy first. You want to be exercising daily. You want to have created that daily habit of exercise. And before that, you need to really be clear on your motivation as to why you're doing this. Why are you doing all of this? Get those 2 steps dialed in. And then when you're ready to dive into nutrition, understand that you are embarking on a journey, and this isn't going to be just a one thing that you do and it fixes everything. It's a decision that you're now going to start behaving differently, that you're going to start refining what you do daily, weekly, monthly, and you're going to keep moving forward. You're going to adopt this 1% better every day. And if you're ready for that, then we're going to talk about that this week and show you guys some really cool stuff for how you can get started and how you can get some great results.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds good. And we'll answer some more questions. We've got some good questions in here. Stephen Pellegrino this is the last one I want to finish on. Have hit body comp goal and now want to slowly gain weight to gain some lean muscle. Optimally, what's a good weight gain per week or month? I'd hate to gain a ton of fat along with muscle. Look, it's a little bit different for everyone, and what also throws a little bit of a spanner in the works is your age. I find that if you are, if you can gain a few hundred grams of lean muscle a week, that's astonishing. It's very, very good. It really depends how hard you're training and how disciplined you are with your nutrition, though. So it's very, very subjective based on the individual. I would say if you're gaining more than a couple of 100 grams a week, then be careful and just keep an eye on it. Look at your midsection. You'll know most guys will get gain weight around the midsection first. You want to make sure that we like to use DEXA scan to monitor it the most accurately, depending on whether you've got access to that wherever you are in the world, mate.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you tomorrow for another great show. Have a good day.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction.
Gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.